Greetings all, and welcome to the 5th segment of A Traveler's Guide to Zebes. And today, we'll be continuing with a look at the planet with the next segment, A Traveler's Guide to the Wrecked Ship. The wrecked ship was the remains of the transport ship that the Chozo used to arrive on Zebes initially in an attempt to colonize it. The landing of the ship, however, was waylaid as an attack from Phantoon on the power system of the ship caused it to crash violently, killing most of its passengers as the entity continued to feed on its power supply long after. The ship was quickly followed by more successful explorers though, and the Chozo were able to successfully create a new colony on the surface of the planet in Chozodia and the many underground areas of Zebes' interior in time. In their absence, the wrecked ship became infested with ghost-like entities and the home of the spectral monster that downed it in the first place. In clearing out Phantoon, the hunter was able to restore power to the wrecked ship, but this in turn revealed just how much of a hazard the craft had really become. Spike traps filled the hallways of the ship, and exposed electrical wires were everywhere, sparks leaping from their broken metal ends that could burn right through weak armor of any type and damage energy shielding. The monsters that occupied the revived ship were key hunters that had managed to make a nest in the upper corridors of the ship, bulls that were invading from the pits of Meridia that lay directly beneath the ship, and the numerous work robots and atomics that the Chozo had brought with them as service machines and portable power sources. This place was a literal ghost ship until the hunter managed to revive the machinery within it, and even then, the ship would only have its existence re-established for a short time before the entirety of Planet Zebes was destroyed. Before we take a good look at the unique biota of this area, it is important to know that as far as previously covered organisms go, this area was home to the Zila, Zoomer, Ghidorah, Key Hunter, and S-Bug. Now then, let's explore the creepy remains of the ship in more detail. The Kazan was a spike platform that was used in high-tech locations in Zebes as a form of both transportation and defense against anyone that dared use the system without understanding its features. In essence, the Kazan moved up and down like a normal elevator platform, and thus had no special effects in that department, but the bottom of the platform was adorned with massively thick metal spikes that could crush anything beneath the structure. This didn't always prove to be a serious hazard in most cases, but if one could not predict the platform's rapid drop from its top position and accidentally got in the way of its path, the damage it could do could more than kill lesser creatures and leave survivors a painful reminder to not drop their guard around otherwise mindless inanimate objects. Still, this is about the limit as to what they can really do to fend off others, and thus reside within threat level alpha. The atomic family is comprised of a unique set of creatures that have slightly different properties and origins, but are all linked in that they are not really alive, instead being the constructs of various different races. These creatures, with the atomic being the textbook example, are for the most part comprised entirely of energy and have no real form of sentience, making them little more than living batteries. In fact, atomics in particular are often used as emergency power sources by Galactic Federation ships, among others. They possess a condensed energy core that saps energy from their surroundings and then uses that power to radiate electricity outward, producing a fairly large circular body and a series of electrical nodules on the outside that form the shape of a tetrahedron, then serve to stabilize the overall shape. These entities have no real purpose and merely seem to exist outside the control of other creatures, but this does not mean that they are benign. While they constantly produce electricity from their cores, these creatures have to maintain a stable electrical field around their cores in order to maintain a definite form. As such, when excess electricity begins to build up in their bodies, they release the excess energy in the form of a projectile of some sort, either as a fire blast of energy or as a drop bomb with a decent blast radius, with the exact type of projectile being determined by the overall structure of their personal electromagnetic field. Atomics generally do not show aggressive behavior towards others, but they are attracted to electrical sources of opposite polarity. As a result of the way most beam weapons are constructed, this means that attempting to charge a beam weapon while an atomic or any of its relatives are nearby will cause them to be drawn straight to it, forcing their electrified bodies into their unsuspecting targets. Moreover, the electrical power is often enough to scramble vital technology when in close proximity, making them a viable threat even from a visual standpoint. In the case of the base atomic though, its core is somewhat unstable at all times regardless, so if enough energy can be expended into it from a beam weapon of any type, it can destabilize the core entirely and cause the atomic to explode. While this could make these entities a pain to deal with if they needed to be removed from one's pathway, they were not the most durable of entities and tend to leave others alone unless they were drawn in by powerful energy sources to refuel their forms, and thus best belong within threat level beta. Bulls were an exotic form of plant life that resembled the members of the puffer family to a great degree, but they were thankfully nowhere near as potentially dangerous in the natural state. These plant creatures generated gases like methane and helium in order to keep themselves afloat in the air, but unlike the puffer and its relatives, their outer skin was actually very thick and could require heavy-duty firepower in order to break. Similar to the puffer, the bull possessed a series of tube-like ports around its body that it used in order to regulate the amount of light gas contained within its form at any time, allowing it to move up and down in the air without having to exert much in the way of effort. However, the ports also served a secondary purpose that was much more important. food gathering. In the absence of sunlight, bulls had taken using their tubular body form to suck in small organisms floating in the air or under the water, with a complex series of filtering structures existing in their interior body cavity that could quickly release a poison into their prey that killed them instantly, thus allowing the plant to then rip the prey apart and reduce it to a state that the inside of its small body could then absorb. Despite the fragility of these internal structures, however, bulls were actually quite aggressive and would actively attempt to ram their hardened bodies into potential threats the moment they vacuumed air into their bodies that was extremely rich in active biological material. This could make them a pain for many to deal with if the thick hides of these monsters could not be readily penetrated, and given the noxious nature of the feeding cycle, it easily makes them fit for threat level beta, and best avoided if at all possible. The coffin was an abnormal creature whose true form or composition remains entirely unknown and may remain so into the foreseeable future. While the hunter was exploring the wrecked ship on her last journey to Zebes prior to its destruction, she encountered these creatures and was thus the sole individual who has recorded data on them. From a metaphysical standpoint, the floating mass of fused skulls known as the coffin may have been the result of the fusion of the lost tortured souls of creatures that existed on the wrecked ship before it was rendered a ghost ship, and could thus literally be referred to as ghosts. However, it also seems these creatures shared a relationship with the multidimensional entity Phantoon, so it's possible that they may have merely been minions of the monster that also existed as multidimensional but otherwise discrete entities. Regardless, the coffin were known to be relatively harmless and only seemed to exist to frighten others away from the sites they occupied. They could cause contact damage if touched, and they tended to appear right behind the target whenever they decided to actually make an appearance, but they otherwise did not actively attack anything, instead simply just floating up and down for a time before vanishing from sight. Unlike Phantoon, these creatures did not have the ability to completely phase out of the physical world and yet still interact with it, so they could still be damaged by most energy types and even frozen with the right beam weaponry. It is hoped that further investigations into Phantoon and the rest of its kind, if others even exist, will help to answer the question of what the coffin actually were, but it can at least be said that if these creatures were the lost souls of those who lived on the wrecked ship before it crash landed prior to Zebes' destruction, then the hunter's defeat of Phantoon and subsequent illumination of the wrecked ship most likely set them free from Phantoon's control, hopefully allowing them to rest in peace. Regardless though, they are still ranked within threat level alpha as they once were.
Seeing these sorts of entities not only fills me with great sorrow and pain, but fascination and eagerness to understand in equal parts. I don't exactly get to see literal ghosts all that often, if you don't count the ghosts of the past as a feeling that lingers within the abandoned ruins left by ancient civilizations. What happened to these souls is truly dreadful, and I do hope that they were able to find some semblance of peace in the removal of that wretched Phantoon from the ship. How dare it do this to them, feeding off them and their ship and seemingly holding them hostage in all of this. It's not just terrible, it's downright despicable. I hope that wherever these souls are now, they have been freed and are in a better place. If there even is a better place than this at all.
The Puyo was an abnormal gelatinous creature that was generally only seen to occupy tropical areas and around large bodies of water. These creatures consisted of a thin, squishy body form that possessed almost no real form of internal organs or structures. Instead, their bodies were made from a thick protoplasm that transmitted information across the body through electrical impulses, in essence making their entire bodies their brain. The Puyo used its sticky body to pull organic material out of water in order to feed, but the area of the water it obtained its food from and the nature of the food was different depending upon the color of the creature. Yellow specimens could survive near the top of the water column and feed on all types of biological matter. Tan specimens could survive from very shallow bodies of water and fed exclusively on fallen plant and fungal matter. Green specimens could survive from the deeper parts of a body of water and leach minerals off metal structures. Red specimens were able to live in mid-level zones and fed on water plants and the waste material of other creatures for food. And white specimens had yet to mature and thus tended to huddle together in secluded areas until they grew to their full size and gained their normal abilities. Altogether though, the Puyo was a fairly weak-bodied creature that could easily be killed with a few shots from any type of beam weapon. Its only real biological boon is that it could move its body with enough power to leap up surprisingly high into the air to try and attack and leach some minor organic material off of other creatures, but this alone was not really enough to make them a viable threat to even small entities, and thus belong within the threat level alpha. The name work robot is a common term for a group of similarly built machines that are used for maintenance purposes on ships by races across the cosmos. At a basic level, these machines possess a long cylindrical body form made of metal that have been specially treated to resist nearly any all types of chemical corrosion. These creatures observe the world around them using a dated but still functional thermal scanner that look for irregularities in the normal energy state around them to locate problems and intruders as well. Some models of the machine were not equipped with any form of offense and were thus left defenseless against attack, but larger models were usually equipped with an energy cannon that could fire small energy shots at a target in order to inflict minor damage and fend off monsters that might be causing havoc in the inner workings of a ship. These machines show little in the way of personality or intelligence, instead just slowly waddling around a set area, performing their jobs needed, but otherwise doing very little with their existence. Though they're usually only a minor threat in most cases, they can still be a problem as they tend to block passages on purpose to protect maintenance tunnels and other structures from thieves that might try to scoot past them. Their thick armored bodies were effectively impervious to all forms of direct damage, but their unsteady gait meant that they could be rocked into moving forwards or backwards rapidly if hit with a direct concussive force, making missiles and super missiles the best tools for getting them out of the way and into a corner or hole where they couldn't be much of a bother anymore. Though the destruction of Zebes eliminated some of the more common models of this machine type, they still exist as starships across the cosmos, and it does not seem like they are going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But as a general threat, those on Zebes could only be ranked as part of threat level Alpha.
Normally, I would point the seemingly crude and simple technology at work here and say that anyone could build something like that. But in this case, that'd actually be a compliment. These robots might not exactly have much to them to make them special, but being a universal presence in that sense is pretty beneficial. If you need a robot that can clean and maintain a ship without too much fuss and resources, then just making a simple cleaning robot and slapping the strongest bloody metal casing on it for protection, though crude, often proves to be the most effective decision. Hell, in their case works even better, because you can just leave them be then with basic defensive programming, or even slap on a center-weak weapon just to get rid of any rumblings or single things that might damage a ship's wiring. Easy, yes, but also effective. Gotta give respect for that.
The true origins of Phantoon are still an utter mystery, and its ability to seemingly shift in and out of reality more than troubles those that are aware of its presence, but its true motives and goals are even bigger mysteries that have yet to be answered at all. It is said by some that Phantoon itself is a ghost created from the sheer misery and longing of the spirits contained in the wrecked ship to move on, but this is bogus information and does not accurately reflect the abilities of the monster. In truth, given the limited observations that have been made of the creature, it is most likely that Phantoon is a deep space specter of sorts, attacking and feeding on the energy reserves of ships in deep space, even to the point of causing them to lose all power and crash into a nearby planet or other object. It is now strongly believed that this is what led the first Chosers that tried to land on Zebes to crash land on its surface thousands of years ago, the spectral monster feeding on its remaining power supply while using its multidimensional powers to fuse the lost souls of those on board into coverns. Mother Brain was somehow aware of this and decided to make Phantoon a major general in her army, though Phantoon never really chose to make anything of this, staying in the wrecked ship the entire time. When it was defeated though, a spectral lock to the gateway to Torian activated just as would for Kraid, Ridley, and Dragon, indicating that Mother Brain valued it as being a destructive power anyways. Regardless, Phantoon was defeated by the Hunter and was thought to have been destroyed, as its dying screams were followed by its form completely warping and deteriorating into a veil of nothingness. But this will not be the last time the Fiend will make an appearance, as it would show up later again in time at the end of the Hunter's adventure on the bottle ship. In terms of physical structure, Phantoon's body form made very little sense anatomically, but that may have only been because no one was able to see the whole picture. The monster was comprised of a large bulbous head with brightly colored crystal-like patches of material and a crystalline running down the form that gave it a flower bulb-like appearance, a neck-like plated structure at the bottom of its form with spikes adorning the rim, a pair of large spikes projecting out and downwards from the base of its head, a pair of thin, unadorned tentacles, and a single massive eye attached to an extendable cord that was housed in what looked to be a double set of open, toothy maws. It is unknown if this was in fact the entire body of Phantoon, or merely a piece of it, its remaining form potentially shrouded in a realm that a human eye was simply not meant to see. Phantoon was able to shift in and out of the physical world at will, and could even hide itself completely for short periods of time. On the one hand, this might suggest that it was truly a ghost, but it is known that it could be made vulnerable to attack if struck while its eye was open. This instead supports the likelihood that Phantoon was indeed a multidimensional entity and only a small part of its body exposed to attack at any given time, and its invulnerability then being attributed to simply retreating to another plane of existence while ready to another attack. In its first encounter with the Hunter, the monster could generate projectiles called Phantom Eyes to attack her, which were essentially spectral eyeballs made from an unknown energy form encased in blue flame. Though it released numerous Phantom Eyes at a time and different functions, such as simply dropping them and letting them bounce off the ground, having them fall down in a straight line, or forcefully blasting them at the Hunter in ring-like waves, they were fairly easy to destroy and only a major threat when there's not enough time to react to them. In addition, the creature showed that it could take on a semi-physical form with its eye closed from time to time, trying to forcefully ram her into the walls of its room. hitting the creature with regular charge shots and missiles seemed to only agitate Phantoon and trigger this tackling maneuver, but striking with something like a super missile drove Phantoon into a rage and caused it to release its fire rings while it was invulnerable to damage, a weapon that the hunter had to avoid many times in order to finally best the spectral monster. While we might not have a great deal of concrete information on this entity and the true nature of his existence, there is no denying that his grip over the wrecked ship held fast for so long for a good reason. With fiery powers that extended past the realm of current understanding and a terrifying visage for any, Phantoon was a terror in all the right senses, and may even come back one day if its ghostly essence remains, so as a whole, it easily belongs within the confines of threat level Delta.
I ain't afraid no ghost, or whatever the hell this bell-headed monster was supposed to be. I've been through battles that make most ghosts afraid to come back to the realm of the living, and I don't blame them. As for this thing, all I can say is that fire of any kind ain't usually welcome. When it's of the spectral kind, that shit will light your soul on fire, and you can't stop, drop, and roll out of that shit. Kind of funny the fire had no scent to it though, which can also make it a bit hard to tell if it's close to you or not if the heat isn't apparent. Then again, this bugger liked to rub season these flames on himself whenever he got the chance. And even if they could be destroyed and disappear with energy weapons, I didn't help put out the souls of its eye couldn't be hit directly. I'm glad the hunter did her job and got rid of this one. I can't trust a damn beast if I can't even throw it a bit, let alone frickin' hold it in my own hands without falling right through it.
Though it may have laid dormant for thousands of years before eventually being repowered in the defeat of Phantoon, the wrecked ship is still an incredibly spooky sight for most to see, and let alone traverse. While the ghost's presence may have faded away once power was actually restored to the downed vessel, it did little to really help make up for the terrible loss of life here caused by Phantoon's initial attack. Even with the power on, it was a mess of broken wires and machines that made it hazardous to traverse in any sort of situation, and the limited variety of beasts here didn't take away from the creepy atmosphere and danger that lurked just around the corner from room to room and hallway to hallway. While standard gear and firepower could help one get far, for any travelers that wished to go here, it was their nerves that needed the most attention, as the death of so many lives on board here left a haunting memory that could literally come back to haunt you if you didn't tread lightly. Having to traverse the interior of any sort of ship that's been abandoned can be frightful, but when you know that it's had more than a few lost souls crammed into it for some time, that can make it even worse. But fear not, for we will now be leaving this abandoned wreck and all those within it, and taking a dive much deeper into the planet's crust, as we next explore the mostly flooded cavernous depths of the ocean zone Meridia. Thank you all for watching this video. We here at Space Pirate Science Team take our work very seriously, and we genuinely wish to be as informative as possible when it comes to the work we conduct here, for both ourselves and in the name of science. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment to help us get greater recognition out there to inform the greater populace of the universe as a whole. Also, feel free to keep track of us through Twitter, as we'll be posting notices there every time something new is submitted for your viewing pleasure. We hope to see you all in the next video, no matter what world it may take us to.